It's okay to keep pursuing your curiosities. You will get there, and the best is yet to come.
I think it's about how we need to call in people rather than call them out if you want to have change, and we need to embed making positive change into everything that we do.
It's about enhancing our collective awareness of how to make diverse research environments work, because it's a shared responsibility.
Hello there, I'm Sarah McCluskey, and this is Research Adjacent. Each episode, I talk to amazing research-adjacent professionals about what they do and why it makes a difference. Keep listening to find out why we think the research-adjacent space is where the real magic happens. Thanks so much for tuning in for a very special extended episode. In a first for me, it was recorded with a live audience at the Vitae Researcher Developer Conference back in Manchester back in September. I interviewed three incredible women, Saneeya Qureshi, Ipshita, Ghosh and Jennifer, Leigh. They were all nominated for the Vitae Outstanding Contribution Award, and I wanted to find out exactly how they had ended up making such a significant mark in this field. Spoiler alert, they are all great examples of when squiggly careers go right. They bring them whole selves to work, and by the sounds of things, they have great support around them. It was a really energising experience to break out of Zoom and into the real world, and I loved the chance for some audience contributions too. Thanks to everyone who helped to make it happen, including my guests for being willing to do something new, Hannah and Rachel at Vitae for being so enthusiastic, and the tech team for the recording. Listen on for Research Adjacent as you have never heard it before. Welcome to the Research Adjacent podcast. This is a very special podcast episode. We're coming to you live today from the Vitae conference in Manchester. And this episode is really special because I'm going to be interviewing the nominees for the Vitae, just get the exact phrasing right, the Vitae Impact, Culture and Engagement Awards. So I've got the three nominees with me today, and they are Saneeya Qureshi, who is Head of Researcher Development and Culture at the University of Liverpool. I've got Ipshita Ghosh, and she is Head of Research Strategy and Development in Social Sciences at the University of Birmingham. And I've got Jennifer, Leigh, who is Reader in Creative Practices for Social Justice at the University of Kent. And for anybody who wasn't there last night, Saneeya was the winner of that Outstanding Contribution category. So well done, Saneeya. But all three have got fantastic stories, and we're going to be hearing about their careers and how they've ended up where they are in the position to be making such an outstanding contribution. I am going to start, I think, with Saneeya, and I just invite you to tell us about exactly what it is that you do.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. So first of all, hello, everyone. It's my first experience, actually, ever doing a live podcast, and it's really exciting / terrifying. In terms of what I do, so I currently lead the strategic direction for researcher development across the University of Liverpool that encompasses all of our PGR development, our postdoctoral development, mid-career / established researcher development, all the way to senior profs and PIs. And in terms of the kind of overview that a little bit of the development aspect of how this researcher development agenda has grown, we were a team of one about 3 years ago to a team of two for 3 years, and we're now a team of 13. So there's been an immense sort of and much appreciated recognition of the importance of this agenda at the University of Liverpool.
That's fantastic. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how you ended up in this role. What's your career journey been?
It's a great question, and I know I've got limited time, so I will try and make this really brief because I am definitely the poster child for the squiggly careers, I think, as they've come to be known these days. So I've lived and grown up across 5 different continents and 7 different countries, but I'll start off with my career as a primary school teacher, actually, in Pakistan. And I had actually undergraduate and a master's degree in business administration. And it was working as a primary school teacher that really sort of nourished my interest, particularly in special educational needs development and supporting children with special educational needs. And in Pakistan and also in Kenya, where I grew up, there hasn't really been that much of a recognition of the kind of professional support that can be provided to children going to primary school. So I decided to come to the UK for 1 year for a master's course in education and to focus on special educational needs. And that led to a fully funded PhD, which led to a couple of postdocs, actually, that were not directly in education, but in social innovation and impact. So it was sort of looking a bit at the wider sphere of social sciences. And it was during that time I volunteered at a European level with the European Educational Research Association based on the research that I did in my PhD. And part of that role was related to researcher development, which I had absolutely no idea existed as an actual profession and not just sort of a commitment by a university to provide dotted training courses here and there. And so when the role at Liverpool came up, I jumped at it with both hands, and they just can't get rid of me. They've been stuck with me ever since then.
I don't think they'll be getting rid of you now either. Yeah, thank you so much. That's really interesting that started as a school teacher. Yeah, fantastic journey. And it just shows, as you say, that this idea that there's a particular path that you have to follow, I think it doesn't actually work out that way for anybody, does it really? Although, well, let's perhaps hear Ipshita about what you do.
Thanks, Sarah. Well, hi, everyone. Like Saneeya, this is my first sort of podcast attempt, and hopefully you'll find my journey interesting as well. So I'm the head of research strategy and development within the social sciences disciplines at the University of Birmingham. And I work with researchers all the way from PGR to professorial staff and help them find funding for their research ambitions. And this can sort of vary vastly for those who are starting out. It's obviously a huge, daunting endeavor to get their first research-funded grant. And then for those who are more experienced, it's learning how to navigate sort of larger scale bids. It's a very competitive world out there, and it's about just helping people navigate it and understand the funding rules and really follow their research sort of aspirations and ambitions while doing it, rather than just applying for funding for the sake of funding. So that's in a nutshell what I do now. I'm also one of the institutional leads at Birmingham for research culture. We have quite a strong sort of professional services-led research culture ethos at Birmingham. It's great to be able to make decisions around research culture, to be engaged in a lot of institutional initiatives, to work really collaboratively and collegiately with our academic leadership at Birmingham. So I've enjoyed this sort of since the pandemic, working on research culture agendas and with a variety of sort of different divisions at the university, and finding very common challenges in areas that, you know, different parts of the university want to address, but they've never either spoken to each other or shared best practice. And part of my job is joining communities of practice and learning from each other.
Yeah, I bet that keeps you busy. There's a lot to join up there. And Saneeya, could you tell us a bit about how you came to be doing that role?
Absolutely. So I did a PhD from the University of Kent a very long time ago in post-colonial literature. And in my third year, I found myself getting very distracted by other people's research. So my PhD was quite interdisciplinary. There were bits of sort of visual studies and film and cultural studies, and then English. And it's like, I like all of these things, but I really do need to be more focused if I want to do a postdoc in any of these areas. And by the end of my PhD, I came to the realization I actually didn't want to do a postdoc. I didn't want an academic career, but I didn't know what the alternative was. So the time when I did my PhD, there wasn't a lot of career support. You didn't have career advisors that were very visible at the university, and you kind of had to find your own way. So I sort of thought, well, let me look at jobs.ac.uk and look at a variety of roles that have research in the title. So research project manager, research administrator, and I'm sure something will work out. And I applied for a lot of jobs in the 6 months after my PhD and didn't convert a single one. And the feedback from a lot of them were I was too qualified for most of those roles. And then I sort of fell into what was then a very nascent field of research support and management. It wasn't very professionalized. There were few universities that had sort of limited resources in this area. And my first job was a research support officer at the University of Southampton, and I think they really took a leap of faith because I didn't know much about supporting research. Straight out of my PhD, is very, very energetic and enthusiastic, but that's about it. So I learned a lot in the role, and I love sort of working in interdisciplinary contexts. So I've since moved from humanities to working sort of with soil scientists. I worked in a robotics lab for a while. I then have been at the University of Birmingham for quite a few years now in biomedical and biosciences, and finally social sciences for the past 4 years. So it's been a really exciting journey, but it was an accident, and a happy one for me. But
I think so many of my guests are in a similar boat that, yeah, they just followed where the road took them, and they end up where they end up. And I can also very much relate to not wanting to choose between all the things that are so interesting. So, yeah, thanks so much, Ipshita. Jennifer, then, to you, what is it that you do?
Well, I'm the fraud because I am actually an academic. I'm not in a research. I know.
No.
I'm really sorry. Yeah, I'm not in a research adjacent role, but I do a lot of work around research culture and around marginalisation in academia and in science more recently. So, yeah, I'm really sorry.
No, we'll let you off just this once. That's it. We're too far in now. But tell us then about how you got into doing that work.
Another squiggly career journey, very squiggly. I did my first degree in chemistry. Actually took a year out because I got pregnant with when I was 19. And my daughter, that I had then, is now in the last few months of her own PhD. So don't ever write off anyone who has a teenage pregnancy. And I finished my degree and went on to a PhD in computational chemistry. But due to a variety of reasons, ended up leaving when pregnant with my second child, who's now in her final year at university, and retrained as a yoga teacher, somatic movement therapist, and was working in communities, Sure Start centres for local primary care trusts, and doing perinatal work, working with hard-to-reach groups. We applied for some money from the Arts Council and got told, oh, this needs to be evaluated, get a university on board. And I'm thinking, I don't want someone else to get a PhD out of my work. So I went back, did a PhD part-time in 4 years, whilst training to be a teacher and moving across the country and getting divorced. And then I got a couple of jobs as a postdoc in psychology, and then a lectureship in higher education, where I did lots of educational development, which kind of verges on to research development, particularly with early career academics. And there's a big crossover, I think, with postdocs who want to develop teaching experience, for example. And then in April this year, moved into social sciences.
Goodness me. So chemistry to yoga, now to psychology, social sciences.
I use a lot of embodied inquiry, so creative research methods. And the work that I do, as I said, it's around research culture. So I've done around ableism and accessible labs, which is how I met Saneeya initially a few years ago, and developed a summer vacation research competition for postdocs and widening participation students. I'm really passionate about inequity and fairness and doing everything that I can to try and make things better basically. So, and looking at it all intersectionally, because you can't just look at one aspect.
And I imagine that experience of having worked in so many different fields really helps with that as well, that different understanding.
Yeah, I think it helps me communicate with a lot of different people and persuade them that actually, yes, we do want to use creative nonfiction to highlight lived experiences for a science audience and say, actually, this works. I think often people are very hidebound, like we need numbers if they're scientists, but actually evoking emotions can be incredibly powerful to get people to change their minds and to do something different.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, thank you so much. So not a straightforward career path amongst any of you, which I think is very much the case for so many of my guests. And I think it's really important to highlight that everybody goes on a journey with their career. So thank you so much for that. But as everybody goes on a journey with their career, inevitably there are downs as well as ups along the way. I wonder if maybe we could turn now to some of the challenges that you've faced. Maybe Ipshita, we could come to you first this time.
Yeah, I think, as for probably everyone in this room, the pandemic was an incredibly challenging time to be working in research and research support. So I think firstly there was a huge sort of emphasis on teaching agendas and doing that well at most universities, and people just lost the appetite to pursue their own research, let alone look for funding for their research. So I think for everyone who worked in sort of my area of research and development, it was a hard slog, apart from sort of personal challenges during that time with childcare responsibilities and homeschooling. And, you know, I think everyone has had their own experience and fair share of pandemic-related challenges. But it took a lot to revive sort of the appetite for research and to get people thinking about how do we build a research culture and a positive research culture around grants, but more broadly coming out of the pandemic. So I think that was one of probably the most challenging periods that I have been in this profession. I also inherited 3 new members of my team the first day that universities closed, with the first lockdown in March 2020. So I had to wholly remotely induct those 3 individuals. And that was astonishingly hard, probably more so for them, not having a community and you know, sort of the peer support networks that you take for granted when you're in, you know, an open plan office and talking to your peers and learning from them. But I'm glad to say that we still have those members of the team with us, and clearly, you know, those experiences, even though challenging, were a learning journey for everyone. And they emerged sort of stronger and having learned in different ways, but having learned equally well. And they're great sort of research professionals and wonderful colleagues. And, you know, we've come out of it stronger, I think. So, yeah.
It's great to hear that they're still with you, because, yeah, that must have been an incredibly difficult time to start a new job and to try and onboard new colleagues. And as you say, with, oh my goodness, homeschooling, yes, if we could never go there again, I would be very happy. Jennifer, I mean, I feel like the teenage pregnancy is almost hinting at challenges, but maybe that was the least of it.
No, that's not what I've written down here at all. To be fair, I've never been an adult without being a parent, so I don't know anything different. I think the biggest challenges in this particular area is resourcing. So the fact that research culture and research development isn't seen as fundamental research. I think we need more research into research development. It needs to be recognised more. The research-adjacent research professionals need to be recognised. I know people who work around impact, research excellence, very often they will formulate an entire impact case study and their name isn't on there, you know, or technicians who contribute to papers and to work, to groundbreaking work, aren't acknowledged, and, you know, they can't apply for grants, they can't apply for funding. So I think that's a huge barrier. I think finding external funding is a huge barrier. A lot of funders, either, like the Royal Society of Chemistry, for example, does incredible work around research culture, but you can't have buyout, you can't have your time put into a grant, which means that it has to be done over and above everything else. So when you're looking at marginalisation, it's the marginalised people who very often do this work, anything around EDI, and they're expected to do it on top of their other load and doing research. So we kind of, you know, this is why we don't see them in the very senior roles. And other funders might say that we can't do this because it's too activist. I know the Wellcome Trust, who are absolutely incredible, and they've got this amazing research environment team, but you can't apply for a Discovery Award to look at research culture because it's not fundamental, which I think that's wrong. I think it should be. There's a lot of really incredible work. So I think, resourcing and acknowledgement, and, there should be more routes for progression for professional services staff and for research-adjacent research professionals across the board. Yeah. All of that are barriers to doing really good work because people put their heart into this, and if you can't get recognised, you can't get rewarded, it's really difficult.
Yeah, it can be really soul-destroying. And certainly as somebody who was the person who wrote the impact case study and did all the work underlying it but couldn't have my name on it, yes, I feel that. So, so definitely some changes needed there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of academics either don't know or they're not aware, or, I don't know, they don't bother to educate themselves to find out. And I think that is... your face says it all. That is also a problem, and it helps create this divide between academics and research professionals where, there shouldn't be one because we're all trying to do really good work that can make a difference. Well, I hope we all are. I know I am.
And I think everybody who's here today would definitely relate to that. And Saneeya, I'm sure you relate to that as well, but what challenges have you faced along your journey?
Yes, 100% to both of what you've raised. And I think probably the challenges, there are two that I'd like to talk about that sort of come down to this responsibility that we have as researcher developers to the community, the communities of researchers that we serve. So from my perspective, the two challenges really are the one about the recognition of the investment in the time that researchers should take in investing in their development, and the responsibility that we have as researcher developers to make it as easy as possible and as engaging and interesting as possible for them to take up the various opportunities. And so there's a lot of work that has, amazing work that has already been done by the community around making the work that we do more accessible and inclusive and open to the amazing, rich, diverse tapestry of researchers that we all serve across all our institutions. But there's still a lot that remains to be done. And I know at Liverpool as well, we're trying very hard, not just in isolation, but working with all of our different partners across the university to share good practice, like what's worked for you, little tips and techniques, such as making tickets available that actually say, I genuinely can't attend this event, but I would like the resources sent, and finding out as well and making an effort to go beyond just people feeding back to say, I couldn't make the event because I didn't have time. What are the different ways that we could really help support your engagement better, because the responsibility is on us as researcher developers. And then the second one is, again, it comes back to the responsibility that we have to our researchers about being honest about their career progression opportunities within academia. And that's been a huge piece of work that we're very proud at Liverpool, certainly through the Prosper project, which I'm just going to sort of flag over here for everyone. The team have done an amazing job over the last 2.5 years to reach out across the sector and work with colleagues across academia, but also with over 200 employers to really help bring together a fantastic, freely available resource across the sector that anybody can access and universities can use to help you use as a tool to support the career development of our researchers in parallel with existing offers, but to help us fulfill our responsibilities to them about the breadth and diversity of career options that do exist. Because I don't have any children, but it would be my aspiration, if I did, that they would grow up dreaming to be a researcher developer one day, or something as fantastic as the wonderful other careers that exist for our researchers beyond academia.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that I'm trying to address with the podcast as well, that highlighting that breadth of careers, because the reality is that the statistics in terms of how many who do a PhD actually continue into academia is surprisingly small. I think I've often been very surprised when I've seen those numbers. So yeah, thank you very much. Well, maybe now turning to happier things, and I want to invite each of you to tell us about something that you've worked on that you're really proud of. So maybe Jennifer, will come to you first for this one.
How long have we got left? 25 minutes? I've done so many things that I'm proud of, but it's nothing that I've done completely on my own, because all of this work has to be done in teams. So I lead research for the International Women in Supramolecular Chemistry Network. So this is where we set out with the aim to create an area-specific, community-led network that to build a sense of community, but also to support the retention and progression of women and other marginalised groups. And we used an embodied inquiry. We've created collaborative autoethnography, worked with research groups using reflective, creative methods, also doing community surveys, and we've published in top chemistry journals. So bringing this kind of work really to the attention of the scientific community in words that they understand, but also dropping intersectionality in there as much as possible, because I think that's really important for scientists. And reading out these vignettes that have been the lived experiences and the impact of marginalisation at conferences, and having people come up to me afterwards and saying, "Oh my God, that was my story." I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of all the work that I do with NADSN, the National Association for Disabled Staff Networks. I'm a co-lead of their STEM action group, and we've contributed both written and oral evidence to all-party parliamentary committee on technology and science, diversity, something. Those words, maybe not in that order. And we're doing a lot to kind of look at how we can support disabled scientists. Currently filming a documentary on disability in science. So if anyone's institution is interested in screening that documentary and hosting a conversation for research developers and for academics and the public, then get in touch later. And that's one of a series of documentaries that I'm working on around marginalisation in science, also women in Africa, and gendered expectations, research culture, and being first gen, so the impact of socioeconomic status. I'm really proud of the relationship I've built with a non-profit, Empowering Female Minds in STEM, who work across Africa supporting women in science, education, and employment. I'm proud of all the work I've done around ableism. See, I did tell you it was a long list. And the fact that it is raising awareness of the disability, chronic illness, neurodivergence, and people are able to talk about it, that policies and practices are being changed and are changing in institutions as they're realising how systemically and structurally ableist they are. You know, this whole thing of the ideal academic, you have to work 100 hours a week and you have to, never need the toilet. It's Kate Sang's work on that. Do have a look at it. And obviously the summer vacation research competition, I'm incredibly proud of that and what we've done to create an opportunity for postdocs that allows them to develop the skills that they need to build a research grant application. So exactly what both of you were talking about, how do you go from being someone else's minion, which quite often postdocs are, to coming up with their own independent ideas and then talking to their director of research, looking at application forms that all the questions look the same and they ask you the same things in different words, and you've got character limits and page limits and impact and, oh God, you've got to do a timetable and sort out a budget. So it's all of that, but in a really developmental way. And this year, for the first time, we opened up that competition to professional services staff. So people who worked supporting research could also say, do you know what, I've got a research opportunity I can offer to an undergraduate, widening participation, I think 90% of them are. And they were able to research into their own practice because they're doing incredible work. And one of them sent me her report this morning, which I'd already read because I'd seen it on our SharePoint site, and it was like, it's absolutely amazing. So I'm so proud of being able to kind of help and give back to the community, and how so many people in the community are just desperate to make things better.
Yeah, what incredible work, incredible projects. I feel like this is going to be a case study in why you were all up for the Outstanding Contribution Award here. Because, such important work. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Saneeya.
I mean, it's impossible to follow Jen, and if anyone wants to join her fan club, I've already started one, and I head up that
I've got the accessible lab stuff as well. Like,
Sign up sheet at the back for the fan club.
There is so much amazingness sitting over here. I think just there's so many things as well that are connected to what Jen said that I would like to touch upon, but I'll try and keep it brief because exactly the point that Jen made, nothing at all is done in isolation. Everything, I very much stand on the shoulders of giants across the whole across continents, literally for me. But I think, so besides the sort of democratization of access, which we're very proud of at Liverpool across all of the resources and activities that we have, that we've led in partnership with our N8 research partnership, universities and others beyond the sector as well, is the element of co-creation. So we very much put the researcher voice at the heart of all that we try to do, and we've set up researcher networks that are really well respected, both at an institutional level, so much so that they feed into, an example is we've just had a new vice-chancellor appointed to the university, and one of the postdocs from our Research Staff Association was on the recruitment panel. It's that kind of culture change that we've been able to cultivate in Liverpool that we're really proud of. I'm really proud of the whole team because it's something that doesn't just come from us as the research and development team, but it's the senior leadership that is very supportive. And it's also about getting that researcher experience, the lived experience of our researchers into all the decisions that we make as an institution, as a researcher development team, but also in the advocacy that we do for them and that we are able to support them when it comes to their personal and professional growth as well, and offering them leadership opportunities. And for me, probably the most rewarding thing has been seeing some of the researchers that I've worked with go on into these amazing, thriving careers beyond Liverpool, and we're able to call them back and be, our wonderful case studies of success of what really genuinely is possible when good research development and good research cultures and environments exist.
It's so satisfying, isn't it? When you hear those stories, you almost see your little babies go out into the world and then you hear the stories back. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Ipshita.
Well, this was actually a difficult question for me to answer because very much like Saneeya said, you think about what you're proud of the researchers that you support and their successes. That becomes sort of, the primary reason why you entered the profession. You wanted to support other people. But for me, I'm going to pick up a single example that is very recent, and it relates to the Wellcome's pilot new funding scheme. That's the institutional funding for research culture, which they launched in January, and they were offering sort of fairly large sums of money to organizations to apply for and sort of use the money to improve their organizational culture in ways that are bespoke to their organization. This is quite a new scheme, and at the university that I'm at, we were slightly sort of puzzled about how to go about putting an application together, because it's not about any single person's research. It isn't just about the university's agendas around research culture. It's about really understanding from the community what is important for them in the research culture space, what needs to change, which areas require money and resource and interventions that can actually meaningfully bring about some positive change in 2 years, which isn't a very long time, and that the university can sustain after that. So I supported the coordination of this institutional submission, and it was one of the most positive and rewarding experiences, just the process of speaking to lots and lots of people through sandpits, through focus groups. And some of these people were very senior stakeholders, including the Vice-Chancellor, but a lot were sort of PGRs, professional services leads for graduate school, for postdoctoral research and development, research and adjacent staff across all career stages. And we had over 100 people sort of actively give suggestion and opinion, and there was so much expertise in the room. It's like, how can you possibly choose? But what to prioritize. But there were some very clear sort of messages around Birmingham's one of the most diverse cities in the United Kingdom, but the university does not reflect sort of the population of the city it's in. And it's a civic university. And there's a very strong sort of consensus that we need to be doing more to be race inclusive and to enhance the multicultural environment that we have at the university, to grow it, and to really help sort of racially minoritized research and adjacent staff not only access the university, but also progress in their careers at the university, which is where the statistics get quite alarming. And I think you've heard over the last 2 days that this is not a unique problem to our university. There are quite a few universities across the sector that really struggle with those sort of progression rates and seeing racially minoritized staff in positions of seniority. So we were very grateful to receive sort of support from the Welcome for this program. It is going to start next year, and it's about how do we make our research environment more race inclusive. It's not just about providing support and interventions for particular groups, but it's about enhancing our collective awareness of how to make diverse research environments work, because it's a shared responsibility. The onus is not on sort of upskilling certain individuals. It is about everybody stepping up with the recognition that we live in a global world, that we have talent from very diverse sort of countries and parts of society all coming together within the space of research, and you can really do powerful things with that. And how do you harness the best of that diversity in your pursuit for research excellence? So that's what the program is going to be. I'm really excited and proud that we get to take this forward, but I really hope that it's going to be in collaboration with many of you in this room and your organizations, because it is a shared challenge across the UK, and I think we have lots to learn from other places who are presumably must be doing wonderful things in this space that I'm not aware of yet. So I will be reaching out to a lot of people about this project once it starts.
Yeah. Oh, well, congratulations on getting the project, and I look forward to seeing how it develops. Brilliant. So I come now to my favorite podcast question, which is, if you had a magic wand and time and money was no object, what would you like to change about the world that you work in? So Saneeya, I'll come to you first.
So this has been actually the most difficult question for me to prepare for, because God knows, like, not just one, I'd like about 1,000 magic wands that I'd be waving simultaneously. But I thought I'd take a realistic approach to this question, actually, rather than go for completely blue sky thinking. And just really boil it down to what I think is starting to happen. So I've clearly started waving it around somehow, is that incentivization of collaboration over competition. And I think, for me, probably the biggest takeaway from this VTI conference in particular has been the overwhelming willingness to share expertise, lessons learned, resources as well, freely, that I haven't felt for a while in the sector. And I'm really excited to be part of this change that I can feel very palpatably. I shouldn't have tried to use a complicated word on a live recording. Yes, and so that would be it. That would be my magic wand. And I try to have a more positive spin on things, but if we were to take like the wicked wand that's happening, I'd very much want to penalize siloed approaches, and that where that doesn't exist, it shouldn't be something that is sort of rewarded or recognized in any way. There has to be a mandatory aspect of working together with others in whatever way that is.
Fantastic. I like it. You're the first person who's asked for a bit of a kind of wicked wand as well. So, yeah, thank you. Ipshita, what would you like to use your magic wand for?
I think it's something quite specific to grants and research funding and the way the system works. So it's an incredibly competitive field, as many of you will be aware. A lot of people apply with really good projects, but there's only so much funding, and it doesn't, support more than a certain number. What I'd like to change is the way funding is deployed. So I think there's a lot of unfunded research, excellent unfunded research, that almost seems a waste sometimes because people have spent a lot of time, they've collaborated with people, they've come up with new tools and methods and projects, and it goes nowhere. And they either have to repurpose it or sort of shelve it and work on something else. So I think it's a challenge to our funders, really. Can you think of a way of using some of this unfunded research to good use? Because could you publish it? Could you potentially put aside a bit of the funding pot to give unfunded sort of teams money for pilot studies so that they can go away and do something with a bit of resource and support instead of getting the full award? So yeah, that's something I'd like to see in the future, a different approach, because a lot of people put in a lot of time, money, and investment, investment of time, and I think it's very inefficient sort of way of funding. So.
Yeah. Oh, sounds really interesting. Thank you. Jennifer.
I wrote down, burn it all down and start again. And now I'm not the only person to have said that at this conference. I think it's basically what you're both saying. We need to have less competition, maybe basic research income. It's not a complete panacea. I know in Germany they have the equivalent of a basic research income, but when I was there a few weeks ago, everyone in the room, it was a chemistry conference, was pretty much white, which is not okay. But I think it goes a long way to take out all of the time and the wasted hours that people put in. And then it doesn't, you can still apply for funding if you need equipment or over and above that. I think I would like to take out the element of competition in the ref. I'm really concerned that the new guidelines, particularly in the context of the sector where so many institutions are struggling, that we're just going to be focusing on research stars and impact case studies that we think are a sure thing. And there's going to be so many researchers who've got a slower profile or, because they've had any one of many barriers, again, intersectionality, that they're just going to get ignored and sidelined. And I would like for professional services, research-adjacent, research professionals, people to have a proper route for recognition throughout everything and progression within institutions. I think we just need to get rid of the two tiers. So that was quite a lot of magic ones, but it was just a very long, carefully worded wish.
Yeah, I think I'm on board with all of that. So fantastic. Let's get those magic wands out. Well, we now have an opportunity to take questions from the audience. I've got maybe about 10 minutes. So does anybody have anything that they would like to ask our panel?
Thank you, and thanks everybody. Really interesting career journeys and chat. I would like you to tell us about a time in your career that you've just had the most fun. That it's something you've done something, or a project, or a thing that happened. You were like, this is the best. I love being here. I love doing this work. This is fun. Because I think with a big room full of people, we get together, we air our grievances and our issues, and sometimes it's fun to reflect on the good bits.
Excellent question. Does anybody want to go first?
Yeah, I'm happy to, because I definitely have one for that. And that's a great question, Duncan. I'm going to steal it and start asking it more often in different sessions that I attend. So for me, it would come back to an event that we organized during the pandemic, actually at the height of it. It was the National Postdoc Conference in 2021. And we worked with a steering group of 24 postdocs from across 14 different institutions across the country to co-create and to design the National Postdoc Conference, this one-day event. And I had the most fun learning from these incredible individuals, laughing and crying as well, like genuinely, because it was, the height of the pandemic and the experiences that inequalities that some of our colleagues went through and lived through. For me personally, it was a time of quite high emotion because I live alone in the UK. I don't have any family, and my countries were both Pakistan and Kenya, always on the red list. So that was really my family at that point in time. And there were actually, my boss still reminds me of it, a couple of times when I actually sent him messages saying, I love my job. That's how much value and enjoyment I got from really being with our researchers day in and day out and seeing the impact on them of what we do and why it makes it worthwhile to do what we do as researcher developers.
Fantastic, thank you. Anybody else got a story?
I mean, I work with creative research methods, right? So I literally get to play, and that's my job. So yeah, I have a lot. I like getting people. You know, when people kind of come in with expectations that it's all going to be very serious, and then you get them drawing with acrylic pens or making collages or something, and then you see that kind of light in their eyes as they understand something. And yeah, I think that's absolutely incredible. You know, it's something that is very childlike, but very, very powerful as well. So I think that's fun. And, you know, and I've got like lots of fancy kit to play with as well, so that's quite cool. Nice.
Ipshita.
Quick comment for me. I find it really fun when you can do a bit of role reversal. So in my line of work, we often have internal selection panels. So sometimes you have to select internally across a range of grants before you can submit externally, because the funder said, oh, you can only submit 2 or you can submit 1 from your organization. And I often invite earlier career academics to be part of the selection panel. Because like Saneeya said, you know, it's a wonderful opportunity to hear from different voices. They have excellent perspectives on a lot of things. They're very committed, and I quite enjoy that reversal of roles and sort of them assessing professorial-led applications. So yeah, that's my bit of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. Brilliant question. Thank you so much. Does anybody else have a question?
Yeah, how fascinating to hear 3 really interesting and really diverse careers so far there. And I was just wondering if you could all go back to like an earlier version of yourself, whether that was when you were doing your PhD or even before. What would you tell your earlier self, do you think, based on what you've learned through your career so far?
What would you tell your earlier self?
Or what advice might you give to your earlier self based on kind of what you know now?
Anybody want to take it first?
Sure.
Ipshita?
Did you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I think it took me sort of several years into a professional career before I realized that my face is often an open book. And one of my sort of mentors at the time said, Ipshita, you should look at yourself in meetings. You know, everyone knows what you think. And I was like, oh God, have I lived, you know, most of my sort of research life just with all my emotions on show. But since that point, I've sort of tried to keep a poker face as far as one can in university committee meetings and professional settings. But I wish I had known this earlier, because yes, I do think a lot of things. And I would have preferred sort of, especially during my PhD seminars, that the rest of the room wasn't privy to sort of
maybe a lot of eye rolling going on. Excellent, thank you. Anybody else want to go?
I feel like I'm on the spot here. Thanks, Holly. Another excellent question, which I'm definitely going to be asking more often. I think for me, I probably go back to even before I was a primary school teacher, when I worked in industry in a pharmaceutical company, GlaxoSmithKline.
Oh, goodness me, we didn't hear about that.
I know. I was part of the dark side before I found the light. And in those years, although I was based in the marketing department and I worked as a brand manager, I was always interested in what was happening in the legal department and, the training and development department or the finance department and so on. And so I think for me, the advice that I would give myself, because I put a lot of pressure on myself being a new business graduate to make a go of it and make a success of it. It's interesting that there's quite the same pressures that exist in academia about making a go of it if you've got an academic qualification like a PhD, actually also exist in industry for those that come from business backgrounds or that have MBAs and then are expected to make these successes of themselves in the corporate world. So I would probably tell myself, because I struggled a lot with, being a failure in the corporate world because I just wasn't enjoying it. And I knew there was always a pull and I was just too nosy. Either it was just me being too nosy or it was knowing that I hadn't found my calling or my passion as yet. So the advice that I'd like to go back and give me over there, slogging away at all of these brand launches and marketing campaigns would be, it's okay to keep pursuing your curiosities. You will get there and the best is yet to come. And one day you'll be sitting on a stage and talking to people about this journey.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Jennifer.
I wasn't very good at taking advice when I was younger. I was quite headstrong, as you can probably tell by the teenage pregnancy. Study law. I think I would have been quite a good lawyer. I described academia as a consensual abusive relationship in the book that came out from Whisk. And I think there is something around that. It's interesting, neither of my children want to go into academia at all. They're like, we've seen you. I think, less negatively, I think it's about how we need to call in people rather than call them out if you want to have change. And we need to embed making positive change into everything that we do. It can't just be something separate. So if you want to build a research culture, it has to be part of everything, as well as a separate endeavour in its own. And it's not something that you can leave up to other people to do. I'm getting nods. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you very much. Excellent question. I think we've probably got time for one more if there's another question. Yes, thank you.
We talk a lot about falling into jobs and opportunities that just turn up, and I'm sure lots of people here can relate. I definitely can. But how do we, as people with jobs, move more intentionally in a direction that we're interested in, but maybe there's not a clear direct path going that way? With moving with more intent is what I mean. Yeah.
Okay, good question.
I think if you're interested in the researcher-developer field or the researcher-adjacent sort of professional field, which is quite diverse, very broad, lots of different roles, look at Sarah's sort of podcast pages because it does give you a really good snapshot of what different roles involve. And I feel, looking back at when I sort of fell into this line of work, I was unaware. I didn't know what the term researcher development meant, or a research facilitator, or a grants office. I had no idea. And this profession has really sort of expanded over the years, and there are so many different roles that, regardless of your skill set, I think you could find something. Obviously, if you're looking beyond, it's a little bit about making yourself aware, raising your awareness of different fields of work. Because I think job titles are sometimes misleading. When you look at a job advert, it really doesn't give you a good sense of what the practical day-to-day, thing would be. So don't be shy to contact people in sort of fields that interest you, because you'll be amazed at how much you can learn through just a coffee and chat with someone, or even a Zoom call. People are willing to share their experiences, both good and bad, and incentivize you sometimes to apply for certain things in certain areas. So that would be my advice.
Okay. And that's what I was going to say. Don't be scared to ask people. If you see someone doing a job and you think, I quite like that, ask, can I take you out for a coffee? Can I hear more about you? If they're senior to you, you might not even have to pay for the coffee. Don't I always say I have no shame, especially when it comes to asking for other people, you know, like, can I have some money so I can support this person? I have no shame with that. It can be a lot harder to ask for yourself.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, embody your inner cis white hair man and just do it, you know. Yes, it might be embarrassing. I'm nodding, yeah. It might be embarrassing, but the worst that can happen is they ignore you or they say no, and then who cares what they think anyway, because they're obviously not a nice person. So I think, yeah, ask people, find out, you know, and don't sit there quietly, ask questions exactly as you did just then.
Great. Good advice. And Saneeya?
Yeah, so I couldn't agree more with, you know, being brave and having these curious career conversations with, you know, reaching out to people in that way. LinkedIn is a good way to do that. There's a book by Timothy Dalton. It's called A 2-Hour Job Search, actually, where he has this tiara framework to how to approach someone for a curious career conversation on LinkedIn, for example. So things like that. But I would also say, and this has helped me personally, because again, I know I've said it a billion times in this podcast, but I came to the UK without knowing anything about even the UK higher education system. I was telling a colleague of mine the other day that when I first came here, my CV was 17 pages long, and I'd only had a few years in my career, but I had to work with a careers and guidance center to learn to apply for my first job as a student, which was a student ambassador job, and they definitely wouldn't have appreciated reading a 17-page CV for that. But I would also advise, so that the way that has really helped me and humbled me as well is reaching out to colleagues that you admire and ask if they can help mentor you. And if they can't, and I've been privileged to benefit from a number of different mentors that I reach out to for different aspects of my career. So one could be that next step in the career progression. Another is about, you know, present challenges, or another is more about the more strategic aspects and so on. And I have always just been speechless with the generosity of people to share their time, even if it's not for a full, you know, mentoring official kind of relationship, but even just a chat every now and then. We're very social creatures at the end. We love sharing, particularly in this circle of researcher developers, but I think everyone loves being asked for help because it's a confidence boost for you anyway. So yeah, be brave.
Thank you so much. And I think that is a lovely point to leave it on, because I am incredibly grateful to all of you for sharing your time, your stories so honestly and so generously. So thank you very much. And thank you to all of you for your questions. And that's where we'll leave it for today. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Research Adjacent. If you're listening in a podcast app, please check you're subscribed and then use the links under the episode to find full show notes and to follow the podcast on LinkedIn, Twitter or Instagram. Also, make sure that you're subscribed to the Research Adjacent Roundup newsletter. You can also find all the links and other episodes at www.researchadjacent.com. Research Adjacent is presented and produced by Sarah McCluskey, and you, yes you, get a big gold star for listening right to the end. See you next time.